Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and today I wanted to talk about how EA, Ubisoft, and Activision actually single-handedly, I think, killed the whole loot box trend that essentially had occurred not too long ago. Now, I don't want to make a bunch of videos on it. I think I'm going to leave it as the final little video on the loot box issue, but I wanted to cover this because of the aftermath that it had left. Now, for those of you who've been following up with Battlefront 2, you guys know that it is one of the most successful games of 2017. Though when you compare it to its direct competitor, Call of Duty, it definitely had, I think, a fifth of the overall sales. Now, that was only physical. I don't know about the digital side of it, but that is pretty fucking bad when you're comparing this thing to its direct like-for-like competitor from the other company. Now, Ubisoft and all these companies, Ubisoft, EA, and Activision, the ones that I'll be putting the trifecta of fucking our side of AAA game development that really does push this kind of stuff, have all patented their own ways of pushing their kinds of microtransactions on all of their games entirely. Now, EA had the whole loot box epidemic, two games that I'll be mentioning over here, which is Battlefront 2, which I know we all know about, and Need for Speed Payback. The Need for Speed Payback is a game that has the artificial grind because of the speed card loot box system, which is dumb enough, but going into Battlefront 2, which is a game that actually removed the purchase of its microtransaction currency because of the severe backlash that it received. Now, even though that it did that, Battlefront 2 still has a progression system of earning thousands of credits with a ludicrously low payout per match and investing that into unboxing, loot crates that can give you performance-enhancing items, fucking steroids for your online game. Now, the system is so bad at this point that a lot of people have resorted to rubber banding their controllers so that they don't get disconnected from sessions and just earning credits in the game because it's all tied to how much you play a match rather than skill. And so because of that, people just sit around grinding away thousands of credits and come back and unbox. Instead of playing the game, they've rubber banded the game. People have devised MacGyverish techniques to not fucking play the game that they bought for $60. And instead try to get some crates out of it in some way, shape, or form. Activision did something even slightly fucking worse, in my opinion, where people actually looked into the progression of Destiny 2 and found out that its EXP scaling goes off after reaching the max level. So basically the way to earn bright engrams in the game without even paying for them is to level up past a max level. Once every level you get a bright engram. It's kind of like the Overwatch. Once you level up completely, you get a loot box type system. Except in this one, it definitely tapered off and tapered off and tapered off and tapered off as higher you got into it. Now, of course, some people could say that was kind of shady in of itself, or some people could say that it's kind of how these games should work to an extent. To me, I find it bullshit. I think if you reach max level and that's how you unbox or get these bright engrams, you need to be able to get them at a constant, steady pace of XP required rather than scaling it off per level. But of course, what did you expect from the fucking company that patented trying to push microtransactions onto the people that were playing their multiplayer games in the first place? Don't get me wrong, I like some of Activision's recent games that have come out, but the shady practice is shady indeed. Ubisoft, which is the weakest of them all when it comes to this kind of stuff, the ones that haven't been pushing it, are the ones who really haven't pushed it because, honestly, they've seen the backlash and conveniently backpedaled out of whatever they potentially could have done. Playing Assassin's Creed Origins, a game that actually has a quote-unquote loot box unboxing type mechanic where you throw in-game currency to unbox random weapons or items that you can use in the single-player campaign, could have used the Helix credits, which are still in the game, the paid-for microtransactions to use them in some way, shape, or form. But because of the shitty fucking reception of this kind of stuff by EA, they had to back out entirely. Now, there's a lot of developers who haven't opted for this at all. Most of them are Japanese. For example, Persona 5, which is one of the best RPGs of this year, one of the finest games, actually, of all time, in my opinion. It just fucking has that style oozing for it. Could have had a shit ton of Persona box crate unboxing type nonsense, but they didn't do it. Neither did Legend of Zelda. Neither did Yakuza, even though I don't know how you do it in Yakuza at all. None of the... Horizon Zero Dawn was a game that didn't have this kind of stuff involved into it. There were plenty of games that didn't have this kind of a bullshit demeanor attached. But a lot of the games, and a lot of the games that were very multiplayer-oriented, definitely push this kind of stuff. Now, multiplayer, I don't have an issue with loot boxes when it comes to these items giving you cosmetic things only. The moment it delves into progression or, territories where it gives an unfair advantage to players buying or putting money into loot crates, is where I draw the line. It makes the game unfair and definitely it definitely unappeals to anybody. It feels like you're playing a mobile game at that point. To be honest, a lot of the recent Loot Crate stuff wasn't even that bad until how EA pushed it. Loot Crates have been here for quite a long time. One of the earliest, big titles that had come out from mobile platforms came with loot boxes in general. You'd be surprised to know that how much money a free-to-play game can really make, the popular ones, when they push this loot crate type mentality into it, the microtransactions, the in-app purchases. So obviously, if you're a developer putting millions of dollars into these AAA games, putting a simple little gameplay edition like this that could personally net you a shit ton of reward might make sense from a bottom line perspective. But they forget that you pay $60 fucking into these games, so of course people are going to be mad when their games play like fucking Clash of Clans. Clash of Clans is free versus Battlefront 2, which is paid for. Now, I was reading into some of the regulations, which is why I wanted to make this video entirely. There's been a lot of countries, a lot of regulatory committees that have kicked in and tried to justify this or not justify this as gambling. Now, in Hawaii, there's currently some regulatory committees that are into looking at how this can be looked at as gambling, but in New Zealand, they've actually classified this not as gambling. And to an extent, I have to agree. Battlefront 2 is not gambling. Console games that really push loot boxes are not gambling by any sense of the imagination. Gambling really kicks in when you have third parties trying to find shady ways of profiteering off of this kind of stuff. For example, you guys remember when Counter-Strike Global Offensive had its skin epidemic? The one where you had CSGO Lotto, all these shady-esque CSGO gambling websites, basically allowing you to use a Steam marketplace, a Steam trading feature to trade your microtransactions or your skin packs to bot accounts or directly to other players in exchange for actual money. Now, even then, if you're exchanging things for actual money, it's not gambling. If Rainbow Six Siege, a game that allows you to earn alpha packs for, basically alpha packs, if you win a game, you have a chance to unlock one. If you get a pack, you can open it for an item that could be a legendary item or a common item. It's one of those slot machine-esque unboxing crate simulator type deals, but it's not something that you can pay for. It's just something you unlock, which is okay. It could definitely help you. I've unboxed some legendary items out of it. I don't feel it's skewed negatively, but that's a whole different video right there. If I could get an alpha pack in Siege and manage to sell it, that still isn't gambling, see? Because somebody bought a pack, they bought it knowing that it would have a certain amount of... They didn't buy it for any monetary incentive. Now, if I took a pack which could contain a potential... Or if I gave a skin, rather, which had a certain monetary value attached to it, like for example in CSGO's world where certain guns were worth thousands of dollars. If I put them into a marketplace and put them up for raffle, that could mean that a certain amount of money was put up for raffle, and whether you were gambling on it, that's what constitutes the gambling side of the spectrum. And it became a multi-billion-dollar industry at that point, which Valve allowed. They might have not profiteered from every individual site, but they definitely profited off the fact that keys were being sold, keys that were used to unbox the crates that you would randomly drop in CSGO. So even though Valve was making a cut in some way, shape, or form. Other developers haven't done the same, such as Ubisoft or EA or Activision, because if this stuff kind of hits in the face for them, it could mean a lawsuit. It could mean class action shit for them entirely. This is what gambling really is. And a lot of legislators, I can't even speak right now, and a lot of regulatory committees have actually said this isn't really gambling, because at the end of the day, you're unboxing in-game cosmetic items that are used to sort of enhance the in-game experience, not items that are being traded for monetary value. You're not getting any money out of unboxing a legendary item in Siege or Battlefront or Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike maybe even still, but you're not getting any form of monetary value out of these items, but, your own sort of self-satisfaction for getting a legendary drop versus common drops in of itself. And that is where I can sort of agree with a lot of people defending the idea that this isn't gambling, because at the end of the day, it isn't. But the biggest problem is that this is still slot machine-esque gameplay. You're still putting it in front of people who have gambling fucking problems. These people put in hundreds of fucking dollars for crystals or whatever fucking microtransaction currency you're pimping out, and they buy the shit out of these crates. That is the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the preying of people who don't know, who have a fucking genuine problem against this. The game that I'm playing right now, GTA Online, is a game where I can actually defend microtransactions to an extent. GTA Online, for those of you who don't know, is one of the more popular games online. Now, of course, it's due to the fact that this is Grand Theft Auto, one of the more popular franchises to exist, but GTA Online comes with the caveat where all the DLC in the game, all the online micro content, all the online story mode expansions, the online content really comes for free to every player, free with an asterisk. In GTA Online, you buy shark cards. While these aren't necessarily loot boxes, the thing with GTA Online is that a shark card can be up to $50, right, for 8 million GTA dolans. Now, the thing is, when every new expansion comes out, the biggest problem with this is as the newer expansions are coming out, things are worth millions of GTA dolans. But you're not getting more GTA dolans for the shark cards that you're buying. There's still 8 million bucks for the most you can buy on a shark card, which means that in the end, per release, some people are actually paying more for this DLC than they would have expected, which doesn't really bode well. But at the end of the day, it means it's free for every single person who is involved in this DLC clusterfuck that people are pushing out. To an extent, microtransactions, I guess, kind of helped gaming to an extent, where people are definitely pushing for freer content for everyone, keeping everybody in the same pool, which is one of the biggest problems with these multiplayer games. But then you also have the single player spectrum where people are still putting microtransactions into that. And it still is a level of a clusterfuck, but I think one thing we can sort of thank EA for is getting the backlash that these things should have deserved. In the end of 2017, the worst of premium $60 free-to-play microtransaction bullshittery occurred, and it was spearheaded by Electronic Arts, but you can't blame Activision, you cannot blame even Konami, you cannot blame Ubisoft for not following this trend entirely. They all put this kind of stuff into they all turned their fucking games, to an extent, into some form of a free-to-play nonsense. But because of the massive backlash EA received, a lot of the companies that were really also involved in this kind of a crappy practice pushed back. Ubisoft backpedaled. Activision focused on different ways to patent and fuck you over. Konami had those MB coins, which were they had the whole mother base insurance, which is a whole nother story to get in entirely. But the spearheaded clusterfuck by EA to release this kind of loot box stuff might have blew up in their face because their stock price did go down slightly from the peak that it was at. It's not the end of the world, but it definitely does spell bad times for a lot of the shareholders at EA, especially when the fiscal quarter changes, when they have to report this stuff as losses, when they have to tell people how much they fucked up. It's going to cause an even bigger drop for them, and it's going to be an issue that's going to sort of stick with them as time goes on. Now, is EA going to learn from what the fuck they did? Yes, they are. Are they going to implement this kind of stuff? Yes, they are. But are they going to be fucking restrained about it? Probably so. We haven't escaped the idea of loot boxes or microtransactions, but we still need to acknowledge that to an extent, to keep player bases in line, maybe at some point needing a bit of this is kind of necessary. It's sort of the way games work nowadays. And unfortunately, it's also the biggest evil we have, too, when it comes to this kind of stuff. Now, I haven't bought Battlefront 2 myself. I played some of the Origins Access trial. I played the betas of it, and I liked the game. It was a good game. It's a shame that a lot of the developers who are behind these good games, like Battlefront 2 and even Destiny to an extent, have to be diddled by their publishers, EA and Activision in this respective regard, to introduce these systems that basically cheapen the value of what is, essentially, a great game. Now, I'm going to leave this video off where it's at. I sort of had to get this off my chest and sort of detail what I really thought the aftermath of this stuff looked like. I know we have a lot of other things like net neutrality and shit to look at, but I got some gaming videos coming out this week. I've got a video where I travel future into time. Just give me a... Just wait for that one to come out this week. This is me, Mudahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.